Hey, this is the punctibyte for the first week of October, and looking ahead, it seems like it's going to be a stellar week. We've got antiseptic and disinfectant testing on Tuesday, and then we get to do transformation on Thursday, as well as beginning to look ahead towards the bacteriophage isolation lab. So I want to talk first about a story that came through on my Twitter feed this morning that just seemed like such an awesome Sunday morning story. It's about some researchers at Emory University in England that have been studying the microbial populations of the English Channel. And I'm going to pull this over, but what they have done is they've taken all of that data that everyone gets tired of graphing and regraphing and just gets to be old hat, and they've instead turned all of this into jazz music. So if you find this story online, you'll be able to click on a link here that actually allows you to go and listen to some of the music that they have composed using the microbial data. So I just thought that was a sweet way to begin a Sunday morning when I saw that story. Let's look at the schedule for the upcoming week and first talk a little bit about Lab 9, where we'll be testing antiseptics and disinfectants. This is actually a nice laid back lab. It's one that's a little less intense, and the lecture is certainly a little, it's just a little more straightforward, a little bit less of less content rich. So it's kind of a fun day in the lab. It is a day where we do need to follow up on the findings from the last lab, so we will want to encourage students to get in and measure their zones, get them the rulers that they need to get the diameter measured from the antibiotic plates, get that data tabulated, compare our resistance, intermediate, and sensitive values, look at the overall trends there, and I will go through that with them on the board once we finish all of that. In the lecture itself, though, should be really straightforward, and you'll enjoy giving that lecture. Many of you will also enjoy for labs 10 and 11 doing that. One quick note on that affects you even prior to Thursday the 4th is that we're going to need to write a pre-lab for labs 10 and 11 that says, lab 10 and 11 pre-lab. And I think I did put that in structurally into your pre-labs, just so that we're aware that that day is sort of a condensed day, and that on the 9th we will have lab 12. Now remember, lab 10 is the one that has all of the incubations as we're transforming E. coli, and so we do need to be very, very organized on that day. So unlike Tuesday, Thursday will be very intense. We need to make sure they get through their first few steps of the lab, the very first thing they do. Then we can pause during the incubation, do part of the lecture, do the heat shock, come back. So there's just a little more structure on that day. Just quickly pointing out for Friday, Marielle and Callie, you are doing open lab. And then looking ahead towards the week of the 8th, our second lecture exam is on the 9th. So that'll be a busy day for me. And as all of you are always so great at helping with that, just helping me get things passed out if needed and whatnot. Alaya, Bo, and Mara, you're going to be open lab that day, but when we look just a little further ahead, and I know this is getting to mid-month, but the first practical exam is on the 16th, sorry. So that means that we're actually going to want to start to think about getting the practical exam questions ready to go, and really it would be great if by, midweek, the 9th or 10th, you could have your practical exam questions chosen, and then we would want to, on the 12th, make sure that we had all the media streak that we needed, everything, all the stains that we need, extragram stains, just everything that we need to make that lab go smoothly. For the practical exam, there is one question about the BHI agar deeps and oxygen concentration. We've now changed that lab to pH, so we may want to think about other questions that we might ask in place of that one question, or at least, partially change that question so that it maybe is a little more representative of what we covered in lab. So I guess that's a lot of looking ahead, but I think it's worth our time in terms of just sort of back planning a little bit and knowing when we need to have certain things done. Okay, let's take a look at the TA guidelines for each one of the labs for this week, beginning with Lab 9. And for Lab 9, I already mentioned, but the main thing is to get them going on the measuring of the zones, the tabulating of the data from Lab 8, making sure that they're on top of that right away when they come into lab. I went in on Saturday to take out the plates for the UV plates and the, antibiotic resistance and the Kirby-Bauer plates. And it looked to me like our Micrococcus luteus must have been contaminated. There was a lot of growth of something that was definitely not Micrococcus on there. And so I'm not, we are still seeing some of the designs, but they just don't come out as nicely as they did with Micrococcus. But at least the concept is still solid with that. So I think in terms of the streptomycin resistance, the mutant plates, the plus streptomycin plates, I wasn't seeing a lot of colonies on those. I may try to put them back in the incubator tomorrow, but we may have to help students pick out colonies. We may have to share plates that do have colonies. So keep your head up for that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Lab 10 and 11. Again, this is the really busy day because we've got to start Lab 10, work through the first few steps, then do the first bit of the lecture, then come back and do the heat shock. And by the way, with the heat shock, we have changed a little bit. We're no longer using that big hot water bath for the heat shock. We've now got a heat block that'll be at the right temperature, but that also means that we'll probably have to do several rounds of heat shock. So it's just a good idea to have a stopwatch, and I think we're going to try to find one to have out for that so that we can do a sort of systematic timing of that heat shock period. Okay, great. So one other note that we found is really helpful is that we can leave everything we need for the transformation in the freezer or fridge until we really need it. And that seems to enhance the quality of the results. That's true with transformation. The colder you can keep things for longer, the better it is. With respect to students' understanding of this lab, there's a couple of things, I guess. One is that if you're not utterly comfortable with this lecture, let me know and I'll plan to give the lecture. I know that some of you are very comfortable with transformation and you're going to be, better than I could ever be. So certainly that's great. But do let me know if you have questions on it and delivering that information, because we want to be sure we're doing a good job of clarifying some of the concepts there. But the thing that will help students know whether they're understanding it is to remind them to predict the results before they leave. And there's a place in their lab manual to predict what plates will look like what. Will they grow? Will they glow? And that's a really important exercise to helping us know whether they understand. So you guys can help me to remember to have them make those predictions in their lab manual before they leave. So I think that summarizes things pretty well. Let me check my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything. It looks like I did pretty well. So I think we'll go ahead and peace out for tonight. I hope you have a great one.